Welcome to our continuing series of virtual voices focusing on the United Nations 17 Sustainable Development Goals. Today we have with us Dr. Kit Miyamoto, Global CEO of Miyamoto International, which is a world-leading expert in disaster resiliency engineering, disaster response, and reconstruction. He provides expert engineering and policy advice for USAID, World Bank, UN agencies, and various governments. Its purpose-driven mission and a strength-focused culture drive the growth of the company. With him is Ms. Sabine Kast, who is the Executive Director at Miyamoto Global Disaster Relief. She is a disaster resilience expert, experienced in designing and leading large-scale urban disaster risk reduction, response, recovery, and resilience programs in Latin America, the Caribbean, and Asia Pacific. Researcher at Meguro Lab at the University of Tokyo, Sabine is an entrepreneur who helped innovate, launch and grow global sustainable initiatives and attracts equality, purpose-driven, passionate, teamwork-focused team members. Over to you, Dr. Miyamoto and Sabine Kast.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Dr. Kit Miyamoto. I'm a structural engineer and a global CEO of Miyamoto International and the president of Miyamoto Relief. And Sabine Kast, you see here, and she is the co-president. And Pablo is our country manager in Ukraine, based in Kiev right now. So there is Miyamoto International. We are a global engineering firm with a humanitarian focus. So we've been area of disasters and conflict for the past 20+ years. And what we do is we work with the UN agencies and USAID and World Bank to assist the recovery and reconstruction and after the conflict and disaster. And prior to disaster happen, we basically prepare the society for it. So that's our job. So Ukraine, we are engaged by the UN agencies to start looking at what can be done for this disaster they have now. This is the data in June, by the way. It's estimated about 150,000 to 200,000 housing units have been either completely destroyed or damaged. That's what we're looking at. And each household unit has about 3 to 4 people. So you're talking about affecting the couple million people, or actually more, for this disaster. And by June, housing sector have about $70 billion damage estimated, and education sector schools is $9 billion. Many of schools being shut down, which I saw that, and the healthcare facilities about $15 billion. And obviously the energy sector and so which has been as we speak being destroyed actually. So that's what's going on there. So about beginning of this month, Sabine and myself and also Greg Beck from our team traveled to the Kiev. We actually had to flew to Warsaw and took the train. And it was quite a bit long ride, I must say. It's about 18 hours ride to Kiev overnight. And from that, that's our operation center is. And we assess the damages in our houses and schools and healthcare in the Kiev area, to the north, to the west a little bit, and also the Chamhiv area that we went to the city there to kind of see the damage received. As you know, the Chamhiv is the place, the city, which been seized by Russian army for almost 8 weeks. So they had quite a bit of extensive damage in vicinity and also in the city also. And also we visit the place like Bucha, RPN, and surrounding countryside also. So this is I must say the train ride all the way from Warsaw to the Kiev. I mean, countryside is beautiful. It's a lot of woods, and it's just kind of hard to imagine there's a war, raging there. Just it's an unbelievable, beautiful country. And once I arrived in Kiev, it's very interesting. Just this is before actually the new bombing started. By the way, we got about a week before, and it's a life. I felt very normal. People just going to work, the restaurants are open, cafes are open. And but then the bombing started. And when it happens and we hear the siren, this area siren, usually in the morning, and we go to the basement. So that's the usually pattern of the lives we have there. And but it's really interesting about is the people are really determined to go on their own lives, because partly there's no choices. People have to live, people have to work, people have to go to school. There's no way to stop doing that. Can't afford to stop doing that. So they are determined to fix and they go. For example, the first was I was 10th or something like that. It was the first day the Kiev hit a bomb. And renewed extensive bombing, and it's hit about 1 kilometer from our hotel, and it had we created a lodge, this crater in the middle of a street, and the crater fixed within 24 hours. So by Tuesday morning, just traffic is on, ready to go. It's a pretty amazing, the attitude of people there. Isn't it, Sabine? What's your thought about there?
Yes, I mean, life needs to go on. They have the UN estimates that about 12 million people in Ukraine need humanitarian assistance, and 6.9 million people are sort of internally displaced. And of course, there has been a huge volume of Ukrainians that have left Ukraine because of this security situation, but those that are still in Ukraine, it is true that life must go on.
Yeah, and it's definitely it's a struggle though. I must say now there's a rolling blackout. So even the Kiev, several hours a day, so it's not easy to go in there. I was talking to our UN counterparts a couple of days, just yesterday, and it's just not really. It's not easy to carry on, but they are definitely doing it. So it's a town of it's Arpin, Sabine. Yeah, it's Arpin. I think it's just a little bit outside of the Kiev. And then you see things like this a lot, nice, beautiful, fairly modern apartment. I got a big hole in there. And what's this hole there? Well, it's usually tank or artillery shell holds that. And, that particular spot's burned. I always can't leave that particular spot, but people live in this apartment, by the way. It's not really, well, it's not safe to live, quite frankly. You got a big hole in this thing, but people have no choices. So it's definitely these things need to be fixed. So essentially, every town and villages the Russian army occupied, what happened is somehow school get targeted. So every school we saw, there's certain damages there. There's no exception. This is one of the heavy duty damage. It's got direct hit by either aerial or probably maybe tank out, I'm not sure. But anyway, got the hit and have a partial damage into this thing. Now, believe it or not, drastic this damage as this picture is, this can be actually repaired. The damage caused by this tank shell or artillery shells or bombing, it's usually the very partial damage like this one. So if you go to the 3 classroom down, it's pretty intact actually, besides of the broken windows and so on. So, this is bad, but about 70% of the structural system is intact. So bad as this is, actually the fixing is not extremely difficult either. Basically, what we do is that we chop the part of the this building which been collapsed and reconstruct a new part and put some new window and modernize the rest of the school. You know, that was basically a lot of things we saw. That was my thought there. What do you think, Sabine?
Yes, this is right. You know, thousands of schools across sort of like the areas have been damaged, and we know that schools have reopened, and many children are studying in classrooms that are, you know, not as heavily damaged as the picture that kid is showing you here, but in pretty damaged buildings. Again, there is just, you know, again, sort of life must go on, and so kids spoke about. You know, that was a relatively heavily damaged school building. Others are less damaged. And what we also see is that, you know, right now, the funding that is available, the humanitarian funding that is available is really sort of only is earmarked and only available for emergency repairs. And so, of course, these funds are now starting to move and go to the schools for, you know, the repairs that they need to do, windows, blown out doors, you know, pieces of walls that have been damaged. But there isn't enough there. This funding isn't available for reconstruction. And so heavily damaged schools like this will likely not be receiving any funding support for at this present moment.
Yeah, that's true. That's actually kind of sad part of it. I mean, it's cool. Let's fix the low-hanging fruits, which means that they're likely repair the school or buildings. It's a sound strategy. It makes sense. But yet, at the same time, schools has the most need has not been touched yet, because this is just not able to fix by the local, you know, town or local village people, obviously. And it's not like a city is well founded. I mean, there's no money there. We've been talking to the mayor of Chamihib and others, and it just doesn't have much funding. So there's a scrape in it, and also they're spending much more money this year for the fuel. For example, Chamihib, they have a heat this power plant, and airway strike destroyed the this conveyor belt, the coal. It's a coal feeding power plant. Now they can't use the coal anymore, so they have to buy the actual fuel, which is much more expensive. So it's definitely a huge strain financially to the local jurisdiction for sure. But actually, some of the villages, you know, villagers actually put their own money to fix a window of schools and stuff like that. Isn't it, Sabine? It was a pretty actually amazing. Actually, people start doing it. You know, they're not waiting for the so the international to show up. They are starting to fix it. Let's see. Okay, so here's the other side. Actually, this is like a big hole. This used to be a reservoir. This is the Chamihib again. It's used to be this water utilities. Each of them be bombed, so they have a very limited amount of water things going on here. You know, so it's a so-called, you know, that hidden in not only the residential or schools, but also select. It's a very pinpoint bombing to the so-called critical infrastructure, such like a water utilities, wastewater treatment, power, energy sector, just throughout. So essentially, that the intent here to really cause the you know, hardship to the people. You know, that's exactly the it's working. I must say, you know, it's not easy at all whatsoever. And this is a hospital. This is actually it's building itself intact, but about the 30 meters away, I used a big hole like this. This is where the aerial bombing happened, and that blast itself caused the all the window to just blow inward and destroy the actual hospital itself. And again, this can be repaired fairly rapidly. It's probably about a 3-month effort to bring back. But it can be done, you know. And one of the tactics we saw up there is almost all the industrial commercial facility like this being bombed, isn't it? I mean, and also like market, I don't know what it is, what is the intent there, but every single large market, kind of like Target style kind of buildings, each city has that, it get bombed, sometimes during the day with the people in there, by the way. I don't know, I mean, I don't see that much of an impact large market there, wasn't it? I mean, there are some, but
yeah, so civilian infrastructure has been the target, schools, even kindergartens, hospitals. But besides that, they also, as Kit mentioned, the electricity or water resources, so a lot of sewage pumps. The city of Shinahi can only power up about 50%, has lost about 50% of its power ability. And similarly with water. The other big target that we saw was these factories. So a lot of industry has been heavily affected over the last 6 months.
Yeah, exactly. So it's actually it's also causing issue for the manufacturing. For example, the window, you notice a lot of windows been blown out, right? So you need to have a lot of supply window. But I know that many manufacturers which was produced on the window being destroyed like this way. So production capacity and also the loss of a job. I mean, thousands of people working places. Now they have no place to work, obviously. So that would be just a huge economical impact, which doesn't even show up in damage estimate here right now at this point. So let's go through some residentials so you can see what kind of things we can do and what's happened here. So this is a typical apartment. This is an Arpin or Bucha, I think, and shows the air bomb from outside caused the pressure to just destroy those windows. You see a lot of those things there. Now, if there's a direct hit, and obviously repair methodology is a seal the building. That's actually a really important part of it. As I said, right now you don't look like there's people living there, but if you go to the other side, if you go see at one side a little bit on the right side, you're gonna see people living there. The problem is that they lost the central heating systems and so on, so that need to be restored as we speak. So interesting about these kind of apartments is the partially damaged, right? So obviously the out of say 100 to 150 units, probably 50 units cannot be used right now. 100 units, well, maybe not 100 units being occupied, maybe 50 units being occupied. So repairing this only say 50 units, which estimates somewhere between $1,000 to $5,000 per unit. You can affect not only that 50 units, 50 families, but you can affect the whole 150 families. So this is actually we found to be very important strategies, and we are collaborating with one UN agency right now about to repairing the 8 different assets like that to show that it is actually feasible in cost structures, and also how the resiliency is actually people are reacted to this methodology. So that's basically we are just about to start doing that. And I think this is going to be really, really important social issue there. You want to add something, Sabine?
Yes. So what was, so the funding that is available from the international agency, there is they were sort of willing. The donors are willing to spend between $500 and $2,000 per family. And in that regard, there has been some support that private homes have received that have those that have nominal damages that fit within that bracket. And so one, addressing these large apartment buildings was seen as not feasible within that cost structure. And 2, as well, a lot of the agencies were concerned about, viewed these really large apartment buildings as almost unrepairable. However, the very large crisis of displaced people is also resulting from these very easily, in our opinion, repairable buildings that are now not being able to be inhabited because they have these localized damages. Some of it is pretty bad, but they're really localized, and there is a lot of nominal repairs that need to be done, like windows, etc., and balcony fixes. And so we've assessed dozens and dozens of these buildings and have and developed sort of cost estimates, and we found that with on average between $1,000 and $2,000 per apartment unit, we can actually fix these, and then also support many hundreds of families to get back into their apartments, their homes.
So many people, if the home is completely destroyed, they obviously cannot live there, but the people have to live. So that's how many of that so-called transitional shelter like this, but it's obviously this has no insulation, nothing over that. So it's definitely super hot in the summer and super cold right now. I don't know exactly how this kind of things actually works, This is a kind of prime example. This is, I think, apartment in Bucha, and isn't it? So this is the, you see people live underneath, and upstairs got burned because of the can't shoot them. And so you see importance of fixing the 5 units. You can provide the proper accommodation or safety or no leaking of water to the hundreds of units here. So this is actually very, very important mission I can kind of see. But let me tell you, man, as I said before, people are not waiting around, they are start fixing it. Cities are start doing things, as we speak, even there is no money, they are start doing it. And I think that's really the spirit of Ukrainian to me, just put the heads down and fixing it, keep going their lives. Now, one of actually this kind of challenge we're going to have here. As many of you know, that Ukraine is one of the last countries which banned asbestos, the toxic, health hazard materials for building, installations and so on, fairly recently, actually. So many of the buildings built in 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, even fairly recently, 2000s, contain the asbestos. And as you know, if you find a hazard material like this in the US, you see that the whole buildings almost get enveloped. You get hazmat suits. You go in to make abatement, right? But since this hazard is something new to this country in a sense, or recognized, the need to have a little more down here. This is the demolition going on of the 19 look like a 70s building, and just there's no dust control. We are standing, and I feel very uncomfortable, but we actually, the wind is going away from us actually. So, I was okay with it, but they just, I see that the camera crews and everybody, some TV was right next to us, they went into the demolition site. And I see that if there's a asbestos in this building, which is extremely high probability it is, then they're completely exposed. And you see that the dust kind of come up and dust can go into the other different parts of the apartment. And obviously, cannot make 100% safe for this type of condition for the asbestos, but there are some certain things one can do to just reduce risk, even the water down, to just make sure that dust doesn't go over the places. Just little things like that probably make the huge thing. So that's something that we're going to be probably looking into. I mean, Sabine, you were here when we're doing this thing. I mean, our team didn't feel comfortable just because we know how dangerous that material is. So just at the random, just the buildings just blown out. You see things like that. Now here's the countryside, and there's a lot of small villages and towns throughout. It's one of the most pleasant, beautiful places. As you can see, little kid kind of going to school right now. It looks pretty normal, but this town that we went was about 2 hours away from Kiev to the like northwest, I think, somewhere in there. I think that's where the Russian invasion from north started coming from west side of Kiev, and they got stopped at the Bucha bridge. That's why everything stopped right there, just so close to Kiev. You know, Kiev was like just about a walking distance, but Ukrainians, they stopped the whole town columns there. But this town suffered, and you see that we see a whole bunch of little house like that, usually made of a wood roof and some block, brick, you know, construction, or maybe something that's wood in a wall construction. And villagers told us just essentially tank coming through and then just randomly just shoot them for heck of it. You know, I don't know why you want to do that, but it's that way. And the sometimes bombed by the motors and all kind of stuff happening along the way. So here's our team looking through that. So we actually tried to see the houses in the countryside and see how we can assist out there. And here's the babushka, you know, the old lady. She's all by herself, wasn't it? I know something you're talking to her for a little while.
Yeah, her house was also, she's all by herself. She had lost her two sons prior to the war, so not war related, but her house was completely destroyed.
Yeah.
And luckily there was a crew that was helping her. As you can see, there's new windows that are being put in. But she lost a lot and is obviously also completely under shock because, you know, all the babushka's houses got attacked. It's pretty unthinkable. They didn't really, you know, they didn't really pose a threat, but were attacked.
Yeah, I know. And then she was talking about a couple soldiers that got shot, like right next to a yard or something like that. Some really crazy stories, you know. Just living in California, it's really something by myself. Yeah, so we went through it and I really asked questions via what kind of needs they need and how they're living it. And as a country manager, probably there. Yeah, even this lady in the countryside has this. She produced milk, right? Sabine, wasn't it? Something like that. And damage was limited, but she lost the window, so you can see that the plastic on it. And she lost the window because of the bomb exploded, you know, next to her house. Fortunately, there's no huge damage in it, but window got damaged. And I think the agencies was not able to fix the windows because of she didn't have kids or something like that. Something it's essentially that the, you know, government and institutions try to do the most needed, right? But she was somehow excluded from a program or something, so she didn't have no window. I mean, yeah, so she, so you know, but she, you know, she has a small business making a meal, but it's just she has no money to replace the window. So that was like her thing. She go, my goodness, you know, it's October still okay, but coming at the month from now, which is like right now, it's getting really cold out there. And she just literally doesn't have money to fix the window. That's all she needs, really. So in many cases, it needs something that's really easy to address, like right now. You know, not about a few $100. There are people who just doesn't have a means to just do it. So we have a lot of examples like that. Yeah, this is the man we met. Somebody, you want to talk about this people a little bit?
Yeah, so their house sustained damages from sort of airplanes that were flying very low to the ground that were dropping missiles or bombs. And so because of that, so the proximity of flying over their house, it ripped sort of half of their roof off and half of their, so the entire living room was kind of sort of ripped off by the pressure of the airplane. He is a mason, so he's been working in construction for quite some time. Well, he's a construction professional, and so luckily in that sense, he was able to already start sort of rebuilding with his knowledge and skill set. But massive damage, and then also, you know, not that many lack of means to repair and rebuild what they had lost.
Yeah, they have nothing, but I mean, those people in the countryside are so incredible. They will always give us like a jam or fruits or it's a bullshit here. Just we just met such a incredible people there. So actually, our nonprofit Miyamoto Global Disaster Relief, we have we're raising the money now, and we're fixing this house. Actually, we picked the three house, the Milk Lady house, and this house, and also one other house. The three houses. That's something we actually start repairing, helping to repair. They're actually doing it, right? They are doing that. They're doing the things now, but we're helping to actually complete that house repair as we speak. So that's what we're doing. Here's our country manager, Pablo. I mean, he was after the war, he was evacuated to he was in actually Germany with the wife and the kid. And he just came back recently to open operation in Kiev. And his wife and the kids obviously in Germany still. And I mean, he knew when he come to the country is a one-way ticket. Obviously he cannot get back with the wife and the kid after that. But he's basically determined to be a part of this war effort in a sense. As he said, people can break things, but we can write back to fix them. That's a part of the essential effort. So Pablo, such a great guy, such a great friend. After all, there's the 150 to 300,000 privately owned these apartments and houses are destroyed, and many people are older and not able to afford or no means doing that. I think it's an incredible amount of gaps, something we can start doing right now. There's no huge international aids for the this kind of nature right now. It just started off right now, but it's not much because of most of our aids does go to the military for the reason makes sense. But it cannot wait for the war to over. Actually, has to reconstruct right now, as people are doing right now as we speak. So, Sabine, you want to talk about this a little bit? Miyamoto Relief?
Miyamoto Relief is a 501c3, so it's a charity organization. We work in really tough places. So we primarily operate post-disaster or post-conflict, and focus really on helping schools and families that have been affected in the disaster. And in Ukraine, we're helping homeowners repair their homes. And how it works is that because of our relationship with Miyamoto International, all money that is raised goes directly to the families for their repair work or for the school repair work. And there's no overhead costs or costs of personnel experts is already covered and doesn't go out of that funding. And like that, we can actually have quite a big impact with the funds that we're able to raise.
Yeah, this is actually the needs we definitely need, and they really definitely need for sure right now. So this lady, I forgot her, this publisher's name, I forgot her name was, but anyway, we're assisting her right now this week. So we'll be back actually at obviously our country office is very active as we speak, and I'm going to be personally back there 2 weeks from now, and till we'll go back there till get fixed essentially. So that's our mission. So hopefully you can share this information to your friends and family and others, and hopefully you can help us to help the Ukraine to rebuild. Thank you very much. Go back.
Yes, thank you very, very much. That was really an excellent presentation that really depicted very clearly not only the damage, but what you need to do in order to be able to at least help some of the victims of this war. We have a lot of questions, so I'm turning over to Susie so that she can ask the questions. Susie?
Thank you, Dr. Durbach, and thank you so much to our speakers. We've had quite a few attendance members ask, where do you think we should start in terms of the rebuilding in Ukraine? What should be prioritized first in terms of cities and specific buildings like hospitals, schools, etc.?
Well, here's my thoughts. I think schools, especially the around the Kiev area, I think there's quite a bit of support there. I noticed that there's a lot of actually the UNICEF and others start repairing the superficial damages. Of course, some of the schools to be completely destroyed need to be reconstructed. And so there's definitely tremendous need for schools. And but once come to the I think houses though.
Reconstruction.
I think housing is probably the most important components of it, you know, because of the it's just the majority of damage goes to the infrastructure in the houses where people live, you know, and especially like a large apartment buildings, which own it's like a condo in the US, right? So owned individually, and damage is focused on a certain area owned by some only few people. So it's not like everyone's going to pitch in to try to fix that. I think that need to be fixed by really public, you know. So I think that to me, like fixing those apartment buildings is like a really fast way to get the most out of it, you know. And I mean, needs are pretty much everywhere. That the picture I showed to you, the very first, that those affected area. So you can see that the orange is a $10 billion more, or blue area. You know, those are so-called affected area mainly. Or there's other places being also affected. Those are the big area there. Right now, obviously, that the east and the south is way too unstable, and so obviously Kiev area and Chernihiv area, you know, Sami area. I think those are places that we are, and also Kharkiv area. I think that's start getting to clear up now, you know. So those are pretty big areas. We actually focus on that, all the way from Kiev to the Kharkiv.
Thank you. And how many resources do you think are needed for this? Like, will we be able to cover the expense on rebuilding the cities and areas that you mentioned we should prioritize?
No, я не поняла.
Well, I mean, what is it, Sabine? You know more than I do. I think World Bank was something, what, $350 billion or something like that, right?
Thank you. And do you think it's possible?
You're on the mute, Sabine.
Yes, it's around that item. Land contamination is will be the most expensive. It will require the most resources. Massive amounts of land has been contaminated with bombs and landmines, etc. So there's, you know, besides the infrastructure damages, there are other sort of high cost and you know, important areas to focus on.
Yeah, you know, there are quite a bit of international aid coming through, just no question about it. You know, from Europe to the United States, but it's just, you're not going to cover everything. Usually, the public money like that covers about 10% of the damages, so 90% has to be done privately. So let's say if damage end up to $400 billion. The public money is going to cover about probably 40 billion. So rest of it, a couple $100 billion come from privately to do that. That's usually the case for the disaster recovery like that, reconstruction like that.
Does the $40 billion, does that include the USAID, or is that the government?
It's a total estimate damage. It was like a $350 billion back in June, but it's obviously damage started to keep going now. So who knows what's the final total would be? And but that's a total estimate damage by the World Bank. So obviously, U.S. government itself cannot do all of that. You know, just it's a fraction of it.
No, I understand that. I'm just curious, what is the percentage of US, USAID, and then World Bank and other donors?
So they had just had a reconstruction conference, I think, like yesterday in Germany, isn't it, Sabine?
Yes, so we don't yet know what the percentage will be from the various donors. I do know that America is putting a lot of support behind Ukraine. We have seen a lot of programs that are focused on disaster risk reduction. So pre-disaster work being eliminated in response to support this massive humanitarian crisis in Ukraine. And so I do know that there's going to be quite a bit of support from the US. I also think that Europe is going to play a big role. The Germans are talking about activating German Marshall Plan. So I do think that there, as Kit says, in June, the losses were estimated at $250 billion. It's rising. Those losses are rising every day. No one entity will be able to cover it. No one will be able to cover this kind of loss. And so it's going to be a really long road to recovery, and it will require everything: private funding, business funding, and these losses won't be fully recovered ever, probably.
Yeah, but as we all know, I think public money, yeah, as I said, right, 10%, maybe 20% tops that covers that, but rest of it, what's going to happen is the probably most important thing about Ukraine in the future, or even now too, is the investment from a private sector. That's going to be key there. And if that should be happening, that would be, Ukraine is a very robust country. And I think now this whole international attentions, and I think it's much more open to that type of Western investment, So that's gonna be key for Ukraine, I believe, for that reconstruction. If any kind of disaster we see around the world, from natural disasters to everything, if it's done right, country can come back much stronger than ever before. We've seen this many cases, and but if it's not done right, it goes opposite. By the way, it's done right means make the not only public money coming through easier, but the private investment coming through, reconstruct those factories, reconstruct those markets, because there will be business opportunity for private investment. That's going to create jobs that bring in the money. That is exactly what the best practice of a recovery process, and that's exactly the thing we're gonna do as the Miyamoto International. So we're probably one of our first business to start investing in Ukraine, but that's exactly it's needed.
But the most difficult problem is that the war hasn't ended, and there is no indication that Russia is planning to stop the bombing. There is just, they are like Genghis Khan. They're out to destroy.
Yeah.
So that's the problem.
That is the problem. Yeah. And that is preventing from so-called reconstruction funding coming through, because right now only sort of humanitarian funding is available, which allows for nominal repair works. But really, reconstruction funding is not being authorized just because it's still in a war, and so many of these schools can't be reconstructed. A lot of the hospitals can't be reconstructed because of the status in Ukraine right now.
Yeah, and also that there will be no business private sector investment to the whole thing.
Right, too.
Yeah, I mean, obviously the business investment is very conservative. Has to be very secure, stable environment to start people making an investment. So yeah, achieving the end of a war is really the critical factor. And because those businesses are going to create the jobs. 90% of people are employed by the private businesses, especially small businesses. And to do that, it's definitely need to be stabilized. Those missiles coming down to the towers need to stop. That's for sure.
Yes, because even with the grains, unfortunately, they have thrown so many bombs in the fields that the landmines are preventing harvesting or even planning in it. And that's another big problem. The UNDP, the head of it, of the mining, has talked about that. That really, it's devastating what they have done.
Yeah, demining is a
That sector. No, they cannot send the grain, and that was one of the big profits that they had from the growing and the sending of the grain all through the world, so to areas that do not have the grain. So even that has been really damaged.
And Dr. Dorbach, that's also now affecting the drought and the humanitarian crisis in Somalia, because they relied on grain and they can't get grain anymore at the same costs. And so it's causing like a severe food security issue in Africa.
Right.
Actually, my good friend Oksana Leshchenko, who is the head of the mine sector in UNDP, just came back 2 days from Somalia, and she was talking about that. Yes, so it's a serious problem, worldwide problem, started by an aggressor that, as I said, is like a replication of Genghis Khan 800 years later.
Actually, people do talk about it quite a bit in the Kiev. I noticed that reference to that. I noticed that one, but it's definitely worldwide issues here, right? It's not about Ukrainian even. We're talking about Somalia, talking about gas prices in Santa Monica. I mean, it's all affected by this incident. So this is not Ukraine problem. This is our problem. We got to fix them, and I think we should be able to do that.
Susie, can you be so kind and ask another question from our audience?
Sure, thank you. So which industry do you think will require the longest recovery, and how long will it take for the full reconstruction of Ukraine, in your opinion?
Well, I don't know. What do you think, Sabine? I think obviously as I said, the private investment going to go later, right? But private investment only happens when the things get really stabilized. So all the factories, I mean, it's destroyed. I mean, every little city we go, there's a factory that's gone.
Yeah.
Manufacturing gone.
Yeah, like factories that have been there for 100 years, that have been building buses and building these kinds of equipment, completely destroyed. And so a lot of industry has been severely affected. I don't know the answer to that, but I do know that the Ukrainian government really wants to focus on building out its agricultural business, or recovering its agricultural business, as it is. Ukrainian land is incredible for agriculture, and that's a real big focus of the Ukrainian government, as well as develop a construction industry to support the rebuild. And of course, we don't know if they are able to do that quickly enough, so that there can be a lot of industry that is built up in Ukraine that serves that market, rather than importing from other European nations or other places. And I think those are the two priority industries for the government of Ukraine.
Yeah, and also it's international issues, right? Also because government cannot, the government has no money to do anything like that. So it's this international need to, I think, need to have like an easy way to make a investment, back to rebuild these factories and stuff like that. Also, remember, those are creating the jobs. People need the jobs to live there. So I think, to me, like industry is probably the last one to be fixing it, because usually kind of money goes to the schools and hospitals and infrastructures and stuff like that. Bridges, by the way, it's all fixed. I mean, governments, small and big, they're fixing out there. So it's pretty amazing how fast those bridges being repaired. So that is first when they fix that, but that's probably industry the last to come. I think that's where we need to invest, make it easy environment to invest back in the country. I think it's really critical.
Susie?
You. What is more difficult to source when rebuilding, water, gas, or electricity?
Well, I think at the just looking that area right now, it's all above, isn't it? I mean, at the we saw that we spent quite a bit of time in the city of Chinese Hill, right? And they destroyed pretty much everything, wasn't it, Sabine? From the water,
Yeah.
heating. You know, only reason they're function is because it's about 30% less people live there now. The mayors and they're so worried about more people coming back. There's not enough capacity to supply the water and the sewer system. You know, so water, energy. I think that I think it's probably you know, energy thing's a big deal. It's been targeted right now, you know, and rollouts, the blackouts sort of it's going on right now in the country, and I think restoring energy is probably one of the most critical components of it.
Yeah.
You know.
Okay, thank you. Do you think we should be building, once we're rebuilding in Ukraine, should we rebuild a shelter in every house as they did in Israel?
Really something to see you about it.
Well, there was a law that was passed that requires a shelter at each school, and so they've been, you know, they have implemented a lot of these shelters. A lot of the schools that were actually built, you know, built 100 years ago already had shelter facilities. The ones that were built more recently did not, and so there's shelters now everywhere. There are a lot of like they also passed another law, and this is actually similar to maybe Israel. They did pass another law that now people they have to, if you have a specific size of a building, you have to have an underground shelter as well, and so that is now being passed and implemented in Ukraine.
Yeah, but problem is that those things are so expensive, you know, and there's no money right now to do things like that. That's a kind of a really difficult problem.
And they've converted a lot of the parking garages, like in one of the photos that Kit showed you, parking garages into shelter.
Yeah.
And so accessible as well. And they have maps, so the alarms go off. There's quite a lot of alarms that go off. It shows up on your app, gives you warnings. It shows you also where there is nearby shelter, etc. And so the Ukrainians are, you know, sort of monitoring this app very closely every day.
Yep.
The biggest problem is the continuing shelling. Now, the fact that they have shelled in the Rivne, and which is very close to Lviv, and the other infrastructures, I sometimes wonder whether there are basically Russian infiltrators there that do not protect the area for their nefarious reasons, because there's absolutely no reason why they should be shelling it in those areas and getting rid of all the electricity that there's basically, they cannot get not only the electric, they cannot get cell phones or anything else. That's just very, very destructive behavior.
Yeah, I mean, people do talk about a lot about, you know, there's definitely the you know, spies and supporters around it, you know, which definitely give certain guidance for whether there should be bombing should be happening, you know, stuff like that. It's definitely going on. That's for sure.
Susie?
Thank you. Undoubtedly, the country's economy will be unstable after the war. So how do you think the economic situation will affect post-war reconstruction?
I think so. Sabine, just your expertise, maybe you can address, but maybe say a couple of things what you think. It's as I said, there will be massive amount of international aids will coming through. You know, start happening now. That's why we're engaged out there, and it will be happening, billions. But remember, it's a 300 billion damage. It's not billions, you know. So public money, international aid isn't going to be good enough. So what really matters is the investment by private components. You want to talk about something a little bit, other stuff?
You know, Ukraine has, you know, something that's been, you know, this is a pre-war condition, is the instability of their currency, the Ukrainian currency. And so that, you know, that existed pre-war, and that meant also because of the fluctuations, a mortgage system was not, there's no mortgage, for example, there's no mortgage system in Ukraine. And of course, that really prevents home ownership and also investments and, you know, households, you know, building up their own assets through a mortgage system. And so that, I wonder how that will play out in the post-war condition as sort of the currency stability and, you know, the economic stability. It's very difficult to tell. Of course, there is when always, you know, in the disaster world, one says that a disaster, like a conflict as well, is an opportunity as it is a danger. So it can really set back countries by, you know, that set back communities and they won't be able to recover. But it's also an opportunity because some communities can actually address pre-societal conditions. There is funding coming through, reconstruction funding coming through, and there is a chance to be better off than before. And so, but it's both an opportunity and a danger.
Yeah, it's true, you know, but look what happened to Japan or Germany, you know, in the World War II, right? It's a burned ash, burned to ground, you know, but look how they actually come out like a phoenix, right? It is definitely possible to make this disasters to be turned to be actually the springboard, you know. And that's a lot to do with the policies of easy of investment and how people determine doing it. And interacting with the Ukrainians for the past month or so, I know now they are going to rebuild this thing better than ever before. That's something I can see now. And those people are not going to stop, you know. So I have a great hope, though. I really do, because people are just completely going to do that, and it has definitely this does have greatest international tensions, right? I think maybe this is a great opportunity for the Ukraine, like something happened to Japan and Germany back in 1945.
Well, I think that you need to keep in mind that in Japan, it was Hiroshima and Nagasaki, and they suffered the devastating destruction there. But the rest of the country was fine. With Ukraine, the Russians are after the entire country.
Yeah.
They're not only focusing on the area that they think that they have a right to, they have now gone completely and are bombing Lviv, which is completely next to Poland. Ariel, are you there?
It's from the point of view of architecture, what is most important in the reconstructions of cities with ancient history? And are certain sites prioritized over others?
I think a preservation of culture and heritage is really critical, you know.
Absolutely.
And fortunately, places we're there, those heritage buildings is spared somewhat, you know. I didn't see that much.
So UNESCO estimates that about 280, I think it is 250, between 250 and 280 important cultural heritage buildings have been damaged. However, none of the UNESCO sites, because I mean, Kyiv and, you know, Ukraine has beautiful cultural heritage, and a number of UNESCO World Heritage sites. Those have no UNESCO World Heritage sites has been affected. And there are certain funding as well. The American embassies have a program that support cultural heritage preservation. And then, you know, of course, the more significant sites get prioritized.
Thank you. Will UNESCO help to restore the architectural monuments of Ukraine?
I know that what UNESCO is currently doing is managing a database that shows the damages. To what extent they will be involved in the rebuilding is yet to be seen.
It's usually that kind of thing. Piece come pretty a little bit later, you know. Right now, just getting the lifelines and stuff like that. But the cultural heritage component is really critical. So there's an earthquake in 2015 in Nepal, you know, which destroyed about 600,000 houses, by the way, and destroyed also incredible amount of cultural heritage buildings. And one is called Gali Batak in the UNESCO site in Kathmandu city center. That's destroyed by earthquake. Now battled for 2 years. And it was bad when we discovered things, just weed growing everywhere. It's hopeless. But Miyamoto Relief got funded by the U.S. Embassy of the Cultural, U.S. Embassy of Cultural Preservation funds, things like that is available. So they funded, and with the Nepalese government, restored the whole thing. You know, it was 120 years old. Just heritage is one of the most important historical sites. So it's sometimes people see that the heritage buildings be destroyed and it's not possible to restore. It's not like that. It can be restored actually fairly cost effectively. So that's something that we need to be really to really focus on that also. It's really critical.
Thank you.
Yeah.
What are the ways to attract investments for the reconstruction in Ukraine?
Okay, I think because now, I mean, I think prior to this, you know, investments limited the agro businesses and stuff like that. And but now Ukraine's on the map, right? You know, people know about Ukraine, you know, and I think I really think it's an opportunity for the country, you know. It's a beautiful also place. It's a beautiful place. I mean, you know, it's never been known for like a tourist destination. Well, Odessa maybe, you know, but it's not like so famous, right? And I think places like Odessa, Kiev, and just such a beautiful, beautiful places. I mean, tourism. I think things like that can be. I think that, you know, Ukraine can really, private sector can take an opportunity on this one here, and after the whole thing is settled down. You know, can attract a lot of investment for that kind of things, and obviously, agricultural businesses for sure. You know, more so.
In your opinion, should we start rebuilding Ukraine when the country is still in the open phase of war?
Yes, most definitely. We need to start now. I mean, people live there. You know, people has to have a house. People has to have a schools. People has to have the water, electricity. We need to support them. They decide to stay. I mean, I guess they could have left, right? They decide to stay. Majority of people decide to stay, and under attacking, they're not living back in Kiev. They're there. You know, we need to help them. We need to help them to stay.
Do you think it's necessary to freeze Russia's foreign assets in order to finance the reconstruction of Ukraine?
Well, I guess that's beyond my expertise. I'm not just a structural engineer. I mean, you may have some different ideas of me, but I don't know. I think first of all, Putin need to stop doing this. Just really stop. You know, there's no need to. You know, I mean, no one, everybody recognizes no one can invade this country. Ukraine is going to fight furiously. Just don't bother them. You know, you're not going to win. It's not possible. You know what I mean? So why keep fighting it? You know, just stop and it's just meaningless thing. You know, so we can get on business to fix things.
So more of an architectural question is, how do you know when a building needs only partial restoration and when it needs to be completely demolished and built from scratch?
Very good question. You know, typically everywhere around the world, I mean, when a disaster happens or conflict, communities aren't used, and the engineering community as well is not used to doing reconstruction. You know, the damages, you know, if from earthquake damage to also the damages that you saw with, you know, the holes and the burnt out apartment units and some of the half of the building being blown off, this is all a very new experience. And so typically what we've seen is the engineering community becomes very conservative about these buildings and tend to want to, take down or reconstruct more than is needed. However, it's known as humanitarian engineering. It is important to have a little bit of a different perspective on it. Of course, quality safety still matters. However, it is important not to take down what can be repaired because of the funding limitations here. And so really that does require some creativity, but also a little bit of a thinking mentality shift, philosophical shift. And so a lot can be repaired and rebuilt, a lot more than one thinks.
Yeah, it's true.
And a lot more than one, and one needs to preserve that. You're really taking down, we've seen after disasters, we've seen so many buildings unnecessarily being taken down because they want to reconstruct them, and then there's no funding to reconstruct, and so they lost so much real estate where people were living. And so really repairing and rebuild is really important rather than taking things down and trying to rebuild everything from scratch. It's not very feasible ultimately.
Yep.
Back to you, Ariel, questions?
Yeah. What is the readiness to work with Western investors to rebuild right now?
So Ukraine really is looking to the West,
Oh, yeah.
I guess now. And so they recognize that America has become as a really important ally and supporter, and Europe as well. And, also integration into the EU is a top priority in their reconstruction plan. And so there's huge appetite, I think, from Ukrainians to get sort of support and investment from the West.
Yeah, I think this war got the opposite impact what Putin was desiring. You know what I mean? He didn't want to kind of absorb this Ukraine kind of stuff, right? But it's kind of went the opposite direction. I think obviously people know nothing to do with that, Putin, and I think Western investment from Europe and America would be most welcome, open. I'm sure, for sure.
Thank you. Which industry will require the longest recovery, and how long will it take, do you think, for full reconstruction of Ukraine?
I really think manufacturing is the longest one, because those does require a large investment. Some of the factories like Sabine is talking about, like it's a factory in Chernihiv, right? It was making some kind of making a street cars. It's for the throughout the country and beyond, I think. And street cars like how do you call it, like a train, and that was a huge factory. I mean, that's like it took us like a walk from maybe 20 minutes walk from end to end. It's a big factory, huge investment, several $100 million. That's going to take a long time, and that business is gone. They're there for decades. They're gone. So because that takes a lot of money and has to be at the completely stable environment to make the investment like that. So I think the agency like IFC, the International Finance Corporation, part of a World Bank, who actually support the investment for this kind of environment. I think that instrument like IFC would be really critical, I believe, to get the investors to get the funding going to reconstruct those factories. So to me, I don't know, Sabine, what do you think? But to me, like just looking visually, I think those factories takes a long time to do that.
Yeah. And then how long will the reconstruction take?
Oh God.
I mean, definitely 10 years plus, I would say. I mean, I obviously don't know, but from unfortunately, reconstruction takes a long time, and it's never fast enough for the affected community anywhere in the world. That's sort of what we've seen, from all major disasters, and of course, this is a true catastrophe here in Ukraine.
Yeah.
In terms of level of damage.
Ariel, we have time for one more question.
Okay. Why don't we end with what are your personal feelings after seeing the destroyed cities and talking to the locals? And what are your main difficulties and your main inspirations thus far?
Maybe I can say it first then. My personal feeling, I'm encouraged. I'm encouraged to talking to people there. I mean, they are determined. Ukrainians are ready to just fix and then back to better than it was before that. That's their attitude. So I'm encouraged. I'm inspired. I'm inspired to be the just little part of this, whole thing. So that's the personal feeling about this whole thing.
Yeah,
But
the Ukrainian spirit is resilient, like the Ukrainian heart is really inspiring.
Yeah.
The people are just incredible. Also, the food is really good too. The dumplings are so amazing. And so,
Yeah.
I guess like it's obviously shock, disbelief. It's like the scope of the destruction is just unthinkable. It is unbelievable. It's difficult to wrap one's head around, the devastation. But I guess the human connection with the Ukrainian people that we got to experience is makes me think of Ukraine and Ukrainians very, very fondly. And so that's sort of a major feeling that I feel through this period as well.
Yeah, and we've been many different disasters, in the past 25 years, right, plus, and we see that the country has, obviously people reacted differently, and I can see some country, I know it's not going to work out, just way how policies set up and how you behave in certain ways. This one is going to work out. I can see that one. Because I really do know this one here, because I think one is very open to the new ideas and new things, and new investment, and people are very entrepreneurial. I think that's a really important part of it, and people are very optimistic about it. Maybe because a part of it, Ukrainians suffer this every so often. It's not like this something is not new. This country go through this thing since, like Dr. Tobak said, since the Genghis Khan era, every 100 years, something. So it's not like the first time that they went through this one here, and they know they can come out better, stronger. They believe in that, and I believe it. It'll happen.
Well, thank you very, very much, Dr. Miyamoto and Sabine Kast, for a very encouraging epilogue. And definitely there is a lot of strength and courage that has been built into the Ukrainian genes since they began in 988, and it happened to be the first democracy in Europe. So it's 1,000 years later, but they have a chance to rebuild and build a kind of country and kind of democracy that they all wish for. So thank you very much for a brilliant and very, very informative presentation. And it will be distributed to as many sources as we possibly can. And I did want to mention that some of the questions that you received were from my students from Ukraine, where I have a scholarship program, and they all, as you see, could speak English and write English, and therefore they could send you the questions. So again, thank you very much. And Ariel, thank you for the hosting. Have a very, very good week, and take good care of yourselves. Bye-bye.
Thanks so much.
Thank you. Thank you, Jill.